Hello again, everyone. Edwin Lawyer back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, we're talking about transit Mercury making a square opposition or inconjunct aspect to one's natal Mars. Now, when we're talking about transits that involve Mercury, that can be about communications, assimilating information, learning, mobility, siblings, cousins, neighbors, analysis, and when we're talking about the transit of Mercury, making basically an adverse aspect to one's natal Mars, it's could manifest in communications, assimilating information, mobility, siblings, cousins, neighbors, analysis. Those things may conflict. It could be with some anger issues one may be contending with at this time. If there's say if the natal Mars Scorpio, it might be over, rational. It might be over something with insurance or taxes or death, or trying to maybe difficulty in making a major change or transformation. Maybe it's adversely affecting the rational thinking, the rational mind at this time. Now, the thing about this is, keep in mind, this transit doesn't last that long. It does last longer than the transits of the moon. Transits of the moon are going to last, applying the actual transits of the moon are only like 10 hours on average, because the moon moves, it traverses the sign so quickly. But the thing is, I mean, Mercury is in days, so it's really it still can have certain significance, and you will get a number of these every year, but but it's not overly prolonged or protracted. But the thing is, this could also, the way this transit can manifest, it could also be about really at this time, really trying to maybe having a hard time articulating matters that are connected, um, with your own fortitude or courage, or there's difficulty either in being outspoken, or it might be, or maybe you're overly outspoken to the point where it might be very, cutting and hurting, the remarks at this time. Uh, you look at this as well, Mars is also connected with drive and motivation. It might be a time where maybe you're not as driven to communicate as you ordinarily are, but or it could be some news you have received may have adversely affected your drive and motivation at this time. Mars is also associated with vitality and energy. It might be a time where you might be more mentally fatigued, more so than usual. Maybe you've been taking in and assimilating so much information, trying to analyze and diagnose something for a prolonged period, and it might be taking a time where that energy is just not there as a result. Mars is also associated with our initiative and enterprise. So at this time, it might be harder maybe for you to initiate matters with communications at this time. You may be more about being really about letting people come to you if they want to talk. You might, it can be, doesn't mean that you can't be talkative or loquacious during this transit, but it could be, you might be more inclined to let other people come to you to initiate conversations more so than usual. Now, also too, Mars is also connected with leadership, so it might be a time where those things that are associated with leadership might be a little bit more difficult to talk about at this time. Um, Maybe you feel it could be a sibling, a cousin, or a neighbor. Might be either it might be taking on some leadership role. Neighbor, it could be in the community. Maybe you don't agree with it, or it could be that maybe you feel maybe there's some dispute over these matters at this time. You might feel that it could be a sibling, a cousin, or a neighbor might be overly, could be authoritative, or being too much of a quote unquote leader toward you at this time. And maybe this is something to, I mean, looking at this as well, Mars is connected with volatility and violence, and it can be a time where harsh words may be exchanged at this time. There might be the situation, with siblings, cousins, or neighbors, people that were prominent in your early education may be more contentious than usual. Now, Mars is also connected with surgery. So it can be a time where those things might be difficult if you are involved in a surgery at this time. Um, it can either be harder to articulate, it might be more difficult maybe to understand what's really going on in terms of your surgery. Maybe you're lacking the details that are involved in it. Um, Mars is also connected with aggression. So it might be a time where it might be harder for you mentally to maybe deal with having to be maybe aggressive in a situation or even combative or confrontational. Um, Another thing too is that Mars is also associated with physical injuries. Sometimes I would say, since it's making an adverse, since transit Mercury is making an adverse aspect to the natal Mars, it could be some situation, with the arms or the hands at this time, or something with the nerves might be causing more exasperation, more anger than usual. Another thing too, anatomically, Mars is connected with the head, the face, the skull, sexual organs. These can be issues that, if you have any issues with these this time, maybe you're having a harder time articulating these matters. It could be, some situation, uh, maybe you might be, in a situation too where might have to be a little bit more careful, regarding possible accidents, because Mars is connected with accidents. Mercury is associated with local transportation and short journeys. Um, Another thing as well is that this could also be, remember that when you look at Mars as well, it's also connected with burns. So if you're doing something, working with the hands, if you're doing welding as an example, then just be extra careful. You're taking your precautions not to get burned at this time. Mars is also associated with sharp instruments, and Mercury again is associated with the hands. So you have to really be careful whether you're using scissors or knives. Be extra prudent at this time, more so than usual. You don't inadvertently cut yourself. um, Now, another way that this transit could manifest, this could be about siblings, cousins, neighbors. At this time, they may conflict, with your energy. Maybe they're draining your energy at this time, and whether they might need some errands or what have you. Say if transit Mercury is in the zodiac sign Cancer, as an example, maybe it has to do with they might be overly clingy or dependent, and they might be asking you for things incessantly, and maybe it's taking a toll on your physical energy and vitality. Now, also, too, another way this transit may be expressed, it might be people from your early education. Maybe the situation with them might be a little bit more contentious. Maybe the situation with them is more acrimonious, more so than usual. Now, let's say, for example, if this is in transit Mercury is in Sagittarius, maybe there's philosophical or religious differences at this time. Maybe there's arguments with over a higher education. Another thing too is that there could be in some cases that this transit may manifest in local transportation issues, may lead to very angry or acrimonious outbursts, or even accidents at this time, because Mars is connected with accidents. And say if transit Mercury is in Gemini, as an example, it could be like rubbernecking. Some of you may have heard that. I believe rubbernecking is connected with, drivers that are actually, they're slowing down to look at an accident, and the fact if somebody slows down and the car behind him is actually going quickly, that could lead to an accident, as an example. Now, another thing too is that this could be a situation where, you look at this as well. Mercury's associated with news. It could be news regarding, because we're talking about Mars, it could be just a physical injury in general, a cut, a burn, or surgery, which is Mars may not be overly auspicious at this time. Say, for example, if your natal Mars is in Aquarius, it might be some issue with an ankle, with a calf. It could be a shin. It might be something with the nerves. Um, and also, too, it can be a situation in some cases. Hold on a moment, people. Remember, sorry, start, be kind, rewind. Problems with the hands, the arms, the nerves, breathing. They might be more irritating or exasperating at this time. Uh, it can be the situation too that when you look this, it could also be um, when you look at this as well. This could also be maybe more difficult to communicate with people that are in Mars professions. It could be people that are in law enforcement. It could be people in surgeons. It might be sports related people, people that are perhaps leaders. Uh, Another thing too that I would say another way this transit could manifest and pan out, it could be there may be some driving issues due to some physical injury at this time. Going back to the zodiac sign Aquarius, if there's problems with the shin or an ankle, or if Mars is in natal Mars in Pisces, it could be something with the feet or the toes. Might make it a little bit more difficult to drive, more so than usual, as some examples. Anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment. Until next time, people, Edwin Learned saying stay well.